Hello, it's ukulele time. I'm Ben Eagle, Reader's Advisory Library Aide at Carnegie-Stout, and this is Beginner's Lesson 2. In Beginner's Lesson 1, which you can view on our YouTube channel, we covered the parts of the ukulele, the string names and ways to remember them. Good children eat asparagus. And we covered tuning once we learned the string names. So we used one of these little clip-on tuners, which come with the ukuleles that you can check out from the library. If you own a ukulele, I'd suggest purchasing one of these if you can. We learned the proper hand positions of holding the ukulele and of strumming the ukulele. And then we went through the first chords, C, F, G, and A minor. And I went through how to play each of those and how you're going to place your fingers on them. Okay? Today in lesson 2, we're going to use those chords more, and we're going to do strum patterns all in 4/4 time, which I'll explain. And once I go through different strum patterns, I'm going to introduce chord progressions. So that will be where you're connecting all the chords and where songs actually happen. And some of the chord progressions will be of popular music. So strum pattern exercises, that's what we have on the screen. You can see there's a lot of symbols there. I'll just go through them real quick. The downstroke and the upstroke, I've got these symbols. These are pretty standard ones that are in a lot of instructional books. If you're looking online, you'll probably come across all different kinds of symbols used. Some might be as simple as an up arrow for an upstroke or a down arrow for a downstroke. I just went with the ones that are pretty well established, that you'll probably come across the most. So the downstroke is the little box without the line on the bottom, and a downstroke on the ukulele is going down towards your feet. That's the most common way you'll be playing. Then the upstroke is what happens when you come back up with your finger and you're hitting the strings with the fleshier part of your finger. And that's just the symbol that's like the triangle without the line on the bottom. Okay, so downstroke, upstroke. Okay, then the count. I'm going to explain this. The count, pretty much every song you come across, most popular music is going to be in 4/4 time. So that means 4 beats per measure. Okay? So you can play most popular music with this time signature. What it means is you're counting to 4 over and over. That's the pulse of the music. So if you can count to 4 over and over, you've got a good start to being a musician. So the strum pattern is going to be a series of downstrokes and upstrokes. And then that percent symbol with the lines, that's what we're using for repeating the pattern. So that's repeating the pattern ad infinitum, over and over. And you continue it until you get a feel for it. So that even when you lose count, you know what it sounds like and you can feel that rhythm pattern over and over. So that's what you're working for. Sometimes when you're counting them, you get off count a little bit. Sometimes it's easier for people to hear it and just feel it, but counting is going to be essential going forward. So we will be counting today. So there's 4 exercises here. We'll start with the first one, of course, and we'll do the C chord. We can mix it up a little bit going through these, but we'll start with the C chord. That's this chord. first string, 3rd fret, in case you forgot. Hopefully you haven't. Okay, so the first pattern. You're counting, we'll count out loud. We'll do 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, because we'll be repeating. So then the down strum goes along with each count. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So practice that as much as you need to. Now, with rhythm exercises like this, you can get a metronome. A metronome is a little, most of the time now they're electronic devices, but it's just a little device that keeps time for you. So it's going to keep perfect time because you're following along with the pulse. You set it at a certain time, BPM, that's beats per minute. You set it at a number that's comfortable for you, and it'll keep a pulse going. We're not going to use one today. What we're getting across today is just how to count and get a feel for these rhythm patterns. Maybe later on, if you want to increase your accuracy, try playing along with one of those. Okay, so let's try exercise number 2 on here. So now you'll notice I've mixed up the count a little bit. There's 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, 4 and. You can divide the beats. The main beats are the 1, 2, 3, 4. You can divide each one up as much as you want to add more flair to the music. So this is 8th notes patterns, dividing those just in half. That's as fancy as we're going to get for now, and as fancy as you need to get really for a lot of stuff at the beginning. So dividing those in half, you're counting 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, 4 and you want to do that as evenly as possible. So you'll notice the exercise, I'm only strumming the down strums on 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4 and I have down, up, down, up. So I'm playing the 3 and 4 and. So now these moving forward are going to take a little more practice. So we have 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and. Or if it's easier for you, just count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and to make it even. You'll do 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so you'll repeat that as much as you need to, and just keep, the key is trying to keep it all even. So you don't want 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, 4 and. You want 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, 4 and. Clear as mud? I hope so. Now, number 3. It's kind of the opposite of number 2. We're going to do the down ups first, and then just the downs alone. So you have 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 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 1 and 2 count it saying the ands the whole time. At this stage, I'd say do whatever works the easiest for you. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So when you're strumming, just to review, you're just kind of flicking down. You're getting your fingernail on the way down. And then on the way up, you're probably just grazing it with this part of your finger, the point, the fleshier part. You don't want to be digging in. You just kind of want to graze the strings gently. And you want to be as relaxed as possible when you're doing these. Now really exercise number 4 we could have done right away. I just wanted to get into the meat of it right away. But exercise 4 is just doing down, up the whole time. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Or 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now when you go through these, do whichever ones you like the most first, but really you're just trying to get them down so you feel them, the muscle memory. So after you play through 2 for a while, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Eventually you get a feel for it, where you don't have to think about it as much. It takes a lot of concentration at first when you're working on these new patterns. But once you count through it and you keep playing it over and over, you should get it fairly quickly. And if not, just keep repeating as much as you need to. No worries about that. One quick point I want to make about the strum pattern exercises before we move forward, that I noticed as I was watching my finger move up and down, that you want to try to keep that motion as smooth as possible. So if you notice, when you strum down, like on exercise 1, which is all down strums, your hand still has to come back up. So if you watch the hand, I mean, it seems obvious that it comes up, but you want to keep that the same as you do with when you're playing the up strums. So what I mean is, on exercise 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. My hand is still coming back up, so it should look pretty similar to how it looks on exercise 4. And 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. And now exercise 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we'll do exercise 2, and it should still look pretty similar. We're keeping that movement very smooth. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. It's just something to think about as you're doing these, just trying to make that motion smooth. Moving on from the strum patterns, now we're on the connecting chords sheet, which is where we're using chord progressions. Now, chord progressions are the bread and butter of music. So you got you're switching chords, and this is where we're using that counting. So each measure is 4 beats. That's our 4/4 time. So it's similar to what we were doing before, where you're counting to 4 over and over, either out loud or in your head when you're playing these. It might be good to start out doing it out loud, just so you get in the habit of always feeling that pulse. But what we're doing here is we're going between chords. So when you were working on the chords from the first exercise, you may have just been going back and forth between chords just to kind of get to switch those chords quickly. That's going to come in handy when you're going through these exercises, because you want to keep that count as smooth as possible, but when you go to your next beat, you have to play a new chord. So the first 2 exercises on here, I kept it similar to what you might have been doing if you were just going back and forth between a C and an F chord or a C and a G. So we got our 4 counts, and we're switching each measure. So each of those boxes is called a measure. That's 4 beats. So we're just going to start with the down strums. That's what I put in there. But once you get comfortable with these, you can pretty much insert any of the rhythms that we tried in the previous sheet, the strum patterns. So what you'll be doing between a C and an F chord, you should be relatively comfortable switching back and forth between these. So you have, before we go through the whole thing, notice that at the end, circled, it says repeat whole exercise. So again, you repeat this as much as you need to. You don't have to stop after you do C, F, C, F. You can keep repeating over and over, and I recommend doing that just to get comfortable practicing these. And don't feel like you have to go through all these exercises at once. Some of them are going to take a lot of time. This is something, just practice exercise 1 and 2 for a while and work on that every day when you're working on new things. So, try to, like I said in the first video, try to practice as much as you're able, but if you can get in every day, even 10 to 15 minutes, you're on a good start. So, doing the first exercise, we're doing C to F. So we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm just going to keep repeating. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to end with 1 strum of C. I always end with 1 strum of the first chord you're doing. If you're playing, you notice it sounds like it ends. That's because if you're playing in a song or something, it has a certain key, which is the note or the chord that the whole song revolves around. So it's often the starting chord and the ending chord. They're often the same. Not all the time, but with these exercises, it's going to sound good to end with 1 strum of the first chord you do. So in exercise 1, it's 1 strum of C. Exercise 2 will be 1 strum of C too. So whenever you feel like ending the song, just give it a good, strong strum of that first chord. Okay. So, exercise 2, I won't play it as long, as more for you to work on your own, but you could, if you're playing along with the video, you can strum along too. So, going back and forth between C and G. Okay. So, same thing. I'm going to do the all down strums at first. If you want to go back and do up and down strums on just these two, whatever makes sense for your practicing, whatever you feel comfortable with practicing first, I recommend doing that. So we got C and G. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. See how we ended with that first chord? And it sounded great. Okay. So, when you're doing these, just pay attention to how your hand switches. I notice that my fingers are kind of hovering above the strings, getting ready to do that next chord. They might naturally do that when you're practicing going back and forth. But just paying attention to what your hands are doing might help you troubleshoot any issues you might have going back and forth. So see how I'm kind of floating above the strings there, getting ready to go to the next chord, or C to F. Okay. So if you're having any difficulty with these, just keep doing exercise 1 and 2. And if you still don't feel like you're switching to the next chord smoothly, go back and forth, or go back to just switching back and forth between those chords. We're using the tips of your fingers, remember? And you're just really working on getting that muscle memory, so your fingers will know where to go and you don't have to think about it. Now, I'm going to move on to exercise 3 and 4. Exercise 3 is the 12-bar blues pattern. So this is pretty much standard for the 12-bar blues. You might see some subtle variations on it, but it's going to be pretty much exactly this. This is a standard chord progression when you start jamming with other musicians, when you start, improvising over something. You can play this pattern over and over. And a ton of popular music uses this. Not just blues music, but it originated in blues music. But rock music uses it all the time, especially stuff in classic rock kind of stuff. But it's in popular music too. So we'll go through this pattern. This is the 12-bar blues in the key of C. So, before I start playing too, notice on measure 4, the fourth square there, or the fourth rectangle, that there is no chord written above. So that means you keep playing the same chord that was written before. So instead of writing C again, it's continuing to be C. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. I ended on the first chord I started with, C, which also happens to be the last chord in this one. Instead of just going on, you get the idea. So that's a great one to practice, and especially really gets you counting when you have to hold a chord for more than one measure at a time. It makes you sure that you're counting it. whether silently or out loud. Okay, now exercise 4. This is a popular chord progression of the 50s, but you'll still see it in a lot of popular music. I've heard it referred to as the doo-wop pattern. You might recognize it, and it's like... songs like Stand By Me by Benny King have similar chord progression. So we'll go through that one a little slower, about the speed that you'll be practicing on if these are brand new to you. Same speed we've been doing the other ones. And eventually, you know, the more comfortable you get, your speed will gradually increase. Try not to play fast. That's a big mistake among beginners. They feel comfortable with the strumming, so they'll play fast, but then those chord progressions aren't very smooth, so they have lots of pauses in there. We don't want that. It's better to get it as smooth as possible. That's what you're working on. You're not working on speed at all. Speed comes gradually once you play a lot. You're naturally going to do them faster because you know how to play them. So don't try to be a speed king. Just play it at a smooth speed. So this last chord progression. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so if you're having any difficulty with any of these strum patterns or the chord progressions, make that what you're working on for the week. So just stay on chord progressions 1 and 2 if that's what you feel comfortable with. And then, you know, leave your ukulele again in a place where you're going to see it regularly. The key is just getting into the routine of practicing every day, whether it's 10 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, whatever fits into your routine. But really just picking that up every day, even if it is just 10 minutes, is really going to increase. It's going to let you move on to the next thing. And that's where the fun happens, when you're playing more songs and you can pick it up and memorize a lot of different songs and play with other people and just make music. It's a lot of fun. So if you need to work on those exercises, 1 and 2, just keep repeating those and then move on to 3 and 4 gradually. But for our next video on ukulele time, I'll be showing how these connect to songs, and we'll be doing some examples. So stick around for the next ukulele time. See you then.